for listening to this episode of Changes Big and Small. This is your host, Damian. Changes Big and Small will help you take action in your life with intention and purpose. In each episode, I invite you to accept unexpected challenges that will help you take action to live the life that you want. In the last episode, I interviewed Susan Boon on forgiveness. Let's start with a forgiveness quiz. Which of the following do you agree with? 1. If I forgive someone, I am condoning their behavior. 2. If I forgive someone, my relationship with him or her will certainly improve. 3. If I forgive someone, I won't be angry about what happened. 4. If I forgive someone, I give up my right to feel hurt, angry, or sad. 5. If I forgive someone, I am willing or able to remain in a relationship with them. 6. I haven't really forgiven that person when I remember what happened. 7. I should only have to forgive once. That is, once I do it, I'll never have to think about it again. If you listened to last week's episode, then you know that forgiveness doesn't require excusing, condoning, reconciling, or forgetting. So all of the statements that I just read are false. There are many definitions of forgiveness, but I'm going to stick closely to the one offered by Susan Boon last week.
The definition that I work with, which is one of the more common ones in the field, which is that forgiveness is a process of motivational change. So a change in your motives towards the person who has harmed you. And it's a reduction in your motivation to avoid them, a reduction in your motivation to get even with them or take revenge, and an increase in your benevolent motivation. So treating them kindly or at least like a human being. There's some discussion about how forgiveness involves replacing negative feelings with positive feelings. Not everybody agrees on that one, but at least the idea is out there clearly that forgiveness is a reduction in negative feelings towards an offender.
So, what are the benefits of forgiveness? The benefits of forgiveness are both physical and mental. It can be a great coping strategy to forgive someone, and it also helps to develop resilience. Forgiveness lets you move on from painful memories and experiences so that they don't define who you are. And as a result, that improves mental health, and there are also physical health benefits such as a decrease in blood pressure and stress relief. However, there is some research showing that when you receive forgiveness for doing a hurtful action, it does not necessarily relieve guilt. And that could be related to the need for making amends. This is an area of further research in terms of how forgiveness affects perpetrators. Forgiveness is generally helpful to victims unless they've been pushed into it, or unless they've rushed the process and haven't felt and processed their feelings. So, when is forgiveness not useful or not helpful? We've defined forgiveness, but the concept can still be difficult for people. There is also the challenge that being pressured to forgive can have detrimental effects on the victim or the survivor. If the person doesn't really feel sorry, then they may feel guilty. Forgiveness can also be used as a weapon. I forgive you, so this is what I expect of you. Or if you really love me, then you're going to forgive this other person so that they can be part of our family. There can be tension for the person going through forgiveness because they're still working through the stages. There can be resentment because you don't think you should have had to deal with the situation, or you're not ready to work through the stages. And it's really not useful to keep forgiving somebody who does the same thing over and over again. One of the questions that I asked last episode was, are there actions that are unforgivable? Think about that for a moment from your perspective. In an article in Psychology Today, psychotherapist Amanda Ann Gregory shared 5 dangers of forgiveness. 1. It can make someone feel unsafe by diminishing the harm and wrongs that they experienced. When people are pushed to forgive, that can feel like an attempt to negate their legitimate feelings of anger or hurt and the harm that they experienced. 2. Forgiveness tends to be about the perpetrator. Usually, self forgiveness is a side effect rather than the focus of forgiveness, which can be very disempowering for trauma survivors. 3. There can be a feeling of blame if a survivor does not want to forgive. And that can further increase feelings of shame. Like, I'm a bad person because I'm not willing or able to forgive someone else. 4. Forgiveness can be used as a tool to try to silence a survivor. Often, reconciliation and forgiveness are conflated, and family members may think that you can be with the person who harmed you and let the hurt go. That is, drop any pursuit of retribution, amends, or accountability. And 5, some people rush through forgiveness in an attempt to avoid pain, and that could actually prevent recovery and make it even more difficult to experience and to deal with whatever emotions are being experienced. So, knowing all of this information about forgiveness, what if you decide that you want to forgive someone? Well, it's important to know the dangers and downsides. But if you're having a feeling of resentment or injustice that you want to work through, there are workbooks freely available on the internet, and I've linked some of them in the show notes. If you are working through some trauma, I recommend getting a therapist to help you work through the stages. According to Dr. Robert Enright, the founder of the International Forgiveness Institute, there are 4 stages of forgiveness. 1. Uncover your anger. How were you wronged? What feelings are associated with the actions? 2. Decide to forgive. It's important here that you feel your feelings and that you actually decide whether you want to forgive, whether you believe you're capable of forgiving, and if you want to go through the process of forgiveness. If the anger that you're holding is harming you in some way, that's a good opportunity for you to consider forgiveness. 3. Work on forgiveness. Use compassion to consider how you might forgive the person. Did you experience forgiveness in the past that helps you have empathy for the other person? Write a letter if that helps. You don't have to send it to anyone. In fact, it's often not very useful to send it to anyone, but it could help you go through your feelings, experience them, and express them. And then the 4th stage is release. This is where you're in a place where you can let the anger go, where you don't feel constant anger or strong emotions from the action that was done against you. There are many other models for forgiveness, such as the Worthington Rich model or a model from the Biosynot Institute. But many of these models are based on the basic 4 steps, and research has shown its efficacy. One of the things that can make it easier to go through the process of forgiveness is when somebody has expressed regret, has asked for forgiveness. It's not always the case that that jumpstarts the process, but it could be helpful. There are 10 steps of a forgiveness protocol from psychologist Judith Eve Lipton that I have shared in the show notes. The important thing, if you want to ask for forgiveness, is to say you're sorry. Also, remember that you may need to keep repeating that you are sorry. So if you are the person that has caused harm, you may want to go through a forgiveness protocol, which starts with saying sorry. Some of the other points that Dr. Lipton includes in the forgiveness protocol is to show that you understand how your behavior might have hurt or harmed the person. Confirm with the person that you actually understand the issue. And again, express regret. Say sorry for specific things from the list. You might also want to show that you understand the impact of the actions that you did. If the other person wants to vent or share information with you or reiterate, it's a good opportunity for you to listen. And there are some previous episodes on what it means to listen effectively. If your behavior was an accident, you could explain this. If it was a mistake, it's also helpful to state that. However, recognize that there are still consequences for actions. Whether or not it was a mistake, there may still be consequences. Being thoughtless is often one of the reasons where harm happens. So you didn't intend it, but that may still mean that you need to make amends. It may also help you consider whether or not your actions are often self-centered and how you could change that approach. Remember to ask for forgiveness if that is what you're seeking. Be explicit about it. State whether you feel remorse or sadness, what feelings you are actually experiencing, and ask for forgiveness. It's helpful if you can describe what you've learned from the experience and also share how you're going to prevent this same type of thing from happening again. This is an often missing step and one that I think is very important to actually say what you've learned from this experience. Be as specific as possible of concrete things that you're going to do to help avoid that hurtful action in the future. Say sorry as often as you need to. The invitation for today is to think about a situation where you did not say sorry, but you really should have. The next time this situation comes up, how will you ensure that you say sorry, that you express regret? Or is there a situation right now, somebody in your life that you need to say, I'm sorry to? You're a parent, a child, a spouse, a friend. It takes practice to be able to say, I'm sorry with contrition, with emotion, without shame. And so I invite you to build this habit if it is one that you think you're lacking. And if you're somebody who says, I'm sorry too often, and find yourself repeating the same thing over and over again, you may want to go through the forgiveness protocol and follow the 10 steps in the show notes. If you're someone who's been wronged and you're thinking about whether or not to forgive someone, you can start with writing a letter. Write a letter of how you felt then, how you're feeling now, and whether or not you want to continue having a relationship with this person. Do you want to forgive that person? What is driving you towards forgiveness? Is it coming from you, or do you feel pressured from somebody else? And will forgiving this person help you have a more peaceful life, a less stressful life? If so, this is a good opportunity for you to think through the 4 stages of forgiveness and work through how you could forgive this person, either doing it on your own or with the help of a professional. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you think it could be helpful to someone else, please share it with them. And if you've enjoyed this episode or found it helpful, please leave a 5-star review wherever you're listening to the podcast. You can reach me at contact@changesbigandsmall.com. Remember, change begins with one small step. Have a great week.